Everybody, welcome back. You're in for a special treat here at KGTR. We're going to be reviewing another awesome issue of Hit Parader magazine from the 80s. This is the Hit Parader magazine Hit Parader magazine issue yearbook of 1988. You remember 1988? That was the beginning of the end of 80s metal. It was, because there was 88 was a great year. And to me, it finished off with the summer of 88 with the Monsters of Rock tour. If you think about it, it was almost like their farewell tour. They didn't know it yet. But the Monsters of Rock tour, even though that was a huge success, it was a great tour. You had you had Scorpions, Metallica, Kingdom Come, Dokken, Van Halen. If I'm missing another band, let me know. But you had all these big bands in 1988 just basically touring all the stadiums. And they didn't know it yet, but about a year and a half at the most, it'd be all over because of grunge. But this is the yearbook of 1988. We're going to visit it and check it out. We're going to go through the page by page, goof on it, comment on it. What were your favorite bands that you remember of 1988? What were you doing in 1988? All right, I'm Tony. If you haven't already, click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and any questions, comments, or feedback, leave them below. All right, let's get into this issue of Hit Parader's Yearbook 1988. All right, as you can see, here is the beautiful cover. We got Hit Parader Yearbook 1988. We got Whitesnake on the cover. We got Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and Kiss. And look at this. It sold for $2.95, this magazine. We got Def Leppard in this issue, Motley Crue, Stryper, Megadeth, Poison, Wasp, Dokken, Cinderella, Ozzy, Judas Priest, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and many more. These are the bands that were big in 1988. So let's check out inside what was happening with this magazine. As we open it up, look at this. Bodybuilder right here. This looks like, I don't know what kind of guitar that is. Could be looks like an elaborate Super Strat. So this is a Super Strat. So DOD pedals. Who didn't love DOD? I love DOD pedals. I remember you were where I grew up in San Diego. A lot of guitar players were playing guitar, metal guitar. You know, we were headbanging. And long story short, you were judged based on your stomp boxes. Obviously, if you didn't have a stomp box, you wanted that stomp box because it was something. But there were friends that had MXR pedals, and you immediately thought of Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads. Then there were other players that had Boss pedals, and you're like, ooh, that guy's got money, because Boss pedals were, I think, the most expensive pedals to buy. It was Boss MXR. And then you had the cheapy budget DOD. I like DOD because they were, it was a different type of shape than the MXRs and the Boss. And I always wanted to have, I was going by color, but I always wanted to have all the effects of DOD pedals. And I wouldn't mind having DOD pedals. I never owned the DOD pedals. I never owned an MXR. I borrowed my friend's MXR Phase 90. That was like off gold color pedal. I remember that one. Or maybe it was orange. I forget. But I always had Boss. I had Boss, Chorus, Flanger, Heavy Metal, DS1, delay, the digital delay, and had all these beautiful colors of Boss. I had like about 5 or 6 Boss pedals. But then we would just goof on other players. Oh, look, he's poor. Why? Why do you say that? Look at that. He's a good guitar player. No, but look at his DOD pedals. They were good pedals. We're just, because we're stupid back then. We were just goofing on our friends. You're poor because you have a DOD pedal, not a Boss or MXR. But DOD makes some good pedals. And looking back, I would love to have at least 5 or 7 DOD pedals in my pedal board. I don't have a pedal board anymore. But I wouldn't mind having DOD again. Have my chorus, your standard chorus, delay, flanger, what else? Phaser, all that stuff, distortion, overdrive. Those are the pedals that I have. You know, you had your amp, a solid state or a tube amp, but you wanted to sound like your favorite guitar players, and you have to get the flanger, phaser, chorus, distortion, and overdrive, and digital delay. and then you were set. Oh, I'd be good though if I had a delay. I'd be better if I had a flanger, because then you could play Van Halen, then you could play Ozzy or Judas Priest, and then you just wanted to have all the effects. But this ad reminds me of the good old days of 82, 83, when I always wanted to buy DoD. I just never did. I wanted to have the best. And to me, I thought that was going to be Boss, Boss pedals. I never had an MXR, and MXRs were good. They were pricey. I just thought I liked Boss better. My friends had MXR, but my other friends, other guitar players, had DoD. We goofed on them, but I loved it. So that was my that's my DoD story. All right, so here we have the index of the spring of '88. So here we go. We got Joey Tempest. We got I think that's the singer for Poison, Bret Michaels, and we got John Bon Jovi. Let's see what's in this issue. All right, Guns N' Roses. Remember, this is the spring of '88. These guys just came out with their album, and it blew up because it's like, what is this? This is before grunge, and this is like the last big metal band, in the metal genre. Guns N' Roses. They were hard and heavy, and these guys were hungry when they came out. Look, no makeup. Well, obviously a little bit of makeup, but they were just basically jeans and leather, like way most bands came out in the 70s or early 80s before glam and putting all the makeup and the teasing of the hair. Obviously he's teasing his hair here, but Guns N' Roses, that first album, they were hungry. You can tell. And so here's Guns N' Roses in the spring of '88. And I guess this is also the guitar player for Guns N' Roses. I can't read that small print, but Guns N' Roses are itching for the sweet smell of success. So this is the spring of '88. Little did they know at this time they were going to be huge, selling out arenas and headlining. Pretty much they came out and they started headlining off the bat. That's how big these guys were. But they came out right at the tail end of metal, so they had to compete with grunge. Look, Ace is back on record. This is Ace Frehley Band. Ace and on tour. So Frehley's Comet. Ace Frehley was my favorite guitar player in the 70s before Eddie Van Halen, obviously. And he was for a lot of guitar players back in the 70s. His makeup, he was in Kiss. He was a great solo player, rhythm player, and on and on. But Frehley's Comet, if you check out Frehley's Comet, he writes some good songs, catchy riffs. And Ace Frehley is all-around great guitar player and singer-songwriter. I didn't care for his singing in Shock Me, but his voice grows on you, and now it doesn't bother me. Not that it bothers me, but he's not the greatest singer, but he can sing, and he writes some awesome riffs. So check out Frehley's Comet if you haven't already. I recommend Ace Frehley, one of my favorite guitar players of all time. All right, here we go. Look, Bountiful Glory. This is the spring of '88. This is already now 80s glam. Hair metal is in full swing with the release of Britney Fox and Cinderella. A lot of people said Britney Fox tried to copy Cinderella with the look and the hair, because if you look at the band, members, they got pretty much like the same hair, almost like the same costumes. Britney Fox is good in their own right, but they look like a copy of Cinderella. But Cinderella was, look, the hair. People loved the hair back then. And Cinderella wrote some good songs. They wrote better songs than Britney Fox. But I like Britney Fox and I like Cinderella. Tom Keeper, awesome songwriter, great riffs and so forth. And Jeff LaBar right here. Jeff LaBar, not the greatest guitar player, but a great compliment for Cinderella. I did a concert review on Cinderella live. I'm ripping on Jeff LaBar because I thought he was going to be a shredder. He's not a shredder. He's a good guitar player for the band. So not to get off on a tangent, I'm not knocking Jeff. This Cinderella, I love Cinderella. I love all the band members. I just thought when he came out that he was going to be a shredder. He's not a shredder by any means, but he's a good guitar player and songwriter and all that for the band. So kudos to Jeff LaBar and Cinderella. But back in '88, look, they were bound for glory, and they did pretty well. Look, this was all around the 80s, 82, 83, 84. He made a fortune, you know he did. Right here, I can't read this print. Let me see if I can bend forward. But anyways, metal method guitar lessons. Look at him. He loved Randy Rhoads. This is the closest you're going to get to Randy Rhoads. This is 1988. But look at the hair. He was in the band Helix. Not Helix. What was that band called? Oh, I forgot the damn name. Hawk. There we go. The band Hawk. It was his band. But he had the best hair. He had the best 80s metal hair. He had the look. He had it all. And he had these, not online, but you would order cassette tapes and a booklet. And there'd be all these licks. Lick after lick. Metal licks. And then he started doing the licks of Randy Rhoads, Yngwie, Eddie Van Halen, Alex Lifeson. And you would order the cassette tape and you would get the licks played fast and slow, and then like a little tab booklet to follow along. But a lot of people, I did it, sent away for Doug Mark's Metal Method. It was fun. If you had problems learning riffs, or you were lazy, but you wanted to learn licks, steal people's licks, you would order Doug Mark's and see what licks you can steal from. All right, pick hit. So obviously this band never made it big. Bay Area rockers confound critics and soar to success. Okay, I've never heard of Jet Boy, not even in 1988. Maybe you have. Let me know if you've heard of Jet Boy. Maybe I'll go look online on YouTube to see if there's anything on Jet Boy, but I don't remember any videos or any hits per se on Jet Boy. Maybe they were big in their local club scene in the Bay Area, but I don't remember Jet Boy. So if you guys know of Jet Boy, let me know. All right, Helix, Street Tough. Helix is a good band. Again, too little, too late, but they were good. So if you like raw heavy metal, good catchy riffs, Helix is a good band to check out. So check out Helix, look them up on YouTube. Most of these bands you can find on YouTube. There'll probably be some videos, and then you can see their catalog on YouTube, because people always upload their videos and so forth. So check out Helix. All right. Bonfire. Bonfire is good too. Watch for the spark, but don't touch the light. Their RCA debut album featuring Staring Eyes and SDI, remixed by ace heavy metal producer Michael Wagner. Alright, so Bonfire. I think I've seen 1 or 2 videos of theirs. Again, they came too little too late. And the reason why I say too little too late is because, in my opinion still, correct me if I'm wrong, 1988 was the beginning of the end of 80s metal. Because it started winding down. It was overly saturated. All these bands were basically coming out, trying to get signed, trying to get the hit single and the power ballad, and get their videos out there to attract women, and then trying to sell out shows and so forth. But there was this overly saturated, and the big guys were still there. You had the Kiss, you had the Van Halen, you got the Scorpions, you had all the big headliners. They were already made their mark. But all these little bands that were opening, the openers for those headliners, they wanted, their due. And sadly, a lot of the bands remained headliners, or they just pretty much disbanded because they couldn't sell enough records. And since it was overly saturated, the record companies gave these bands pretty much, all right, you have one album. We're going to give you one album. See what you do with it. And if it doesn't sell, we're done. Or if you have a good hit, and if it does well, we'll give you another record contract or another record to make whatever. And you either had it or you didn't. And so Bonfire was okay, but you can find them on YouTube. All right, Whitesnake, David Coverdale, Riding High Again. There you got Rudy Sarzo, Tommy Aldridge. Look at this lineup: Vivian Campbell, David Coverdale, and I don't know who this is. I don't know who that is. So let me know who that is. Maybe, is that Adrian Vandenberg? That could be Adrian Vandenberg. Oh yeah, so David Coverdale. I could be wrong. Yeah, it is. Adrian Vandenberg and Vivian Campbell. These two were guitar gods. Awesome drummer here, Tommy Aldridge, and then Rudy Sarzo. I remember him when he had black hair with Ozzy in '82. And then here he is with blonde flowing hair. So good article there. Look at this. Doc and On the Attack. Back for the Attack leads West Coast rockers to top of the metal mountain. So maybe we'll revisit this issue and go over what it has to say. That's an awesome picture though, right? Remember back in the 80s? Right here would be Staples. You would go ahead and tear it out and then put this little pin up on your wall or in your school locker or whatnot. But here we go, Doc and On the Attack. So their album was released in 87, Back for the Attack. So they're on tour in the spring of 88 for Back for the Attack. And then sometime in April, May, I think, they released Beast from the East in 88. And I think their last album they did. Yeah. Their last studio album was Back for the Attack. And then their last album was Beast from the East. Unleashed in the East or Beast from the East. 1988 live album. Right? And then they did their tour with Monsters of Rock. And that was it. They broke up after that. They pretty much broke up after Monsters of Rock. They were done. And George Lynch went on in 89, started doing clinics, and he formed Lynch Mob. So 88 was the end for Dokken. Since 82, 81, when Don Dokken went to Germany to record Breaking the Chains, and he recruited Juan Crozier of Rat, and then he had George Lynch on guitar, and then they came back. And then Rat and Dokken switched guitar players with Warren and Dokken, or George Lynch. Then they went back to each other. And so from like 82 to 88, Dokken had their window of success. Testament. Testament's another great metal band. This is another Bay Area metal mavens cast giant shadow with the legacy. So if you're a fan of Testament, check out Testament 1988. I'm sure you can find some records out there on YouTube. Pick Hit by Rob Andrews. Easy-O. I remember that band. I remember the name Easy-O. Look. Again, Too Little Too Late. This is like a very extreme look. Motley Crue-ish. Kiss type of makeup. All spiked hair. Elaborate costumes. So are they saying look at me or listen to me? Because I think I heard one song of theirs. They're pretty good. So check out Easy-O right now if you have a chance. Just go on YouTube and type in Easy-O heavy metal. Look, Kiss and Gene Simmons produced his first US LP by Japanese metal men. So I guess Gene Simmons could say, I discovered Easy-O like I discovered Van Halen. That's what he says. So check out Easy-O. I'm sure you may like them. They were going to compete with Loudness. Remember Loudness? Loudness was like the top metal band from Japan. In the 80s. So Easy-O basically wanted their due also. Alright, TNT. Awesome. Well, I forgot who the singer is. But the singer for TNT is an amazing singer. Oh, he can sing. Oh. And then the guitar player here. Nordic American combo aims for the big time with Tell No Tales. TNT is an awesome band. You know who's also a great band? Was Zebra. Zebra was another great band. Again, Too Little Too Late. Thinking they came out too late when metal was dying. But set to explode. So TNT, they were big. But again, 89, 90, you're done. The metal era is done. 80s heavy metal was over by 89, 90. You know, you can still try to buy albums in 90, 91, but they weren't selling. So, and you saw a lot of bands disband and lack of concert tickets and so forth, and the record companies moved on to all these grunge bands. All right, Motley Crue, Eve of Destruction. All right, look at that. Remember from 82, 83, they exploded onto the scene, and they were basically along with Def Leppard and Quiet Riot. Remember? Def Leppard, Quiet Riot, and Motley Crue. In 83, exploded. Metal Health, Pyromania, and Shout at the Devil. Those three albums were competing with the Scorpions, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Van Halen, and that's why 83 was an awesome year for 80s metal. But this is the spring of 88. Alright, we got Vince Neil right here. This is already into way heavy of drugs right here. Same here. Girls, Girls, Girls gave Motley Crue its widest audience ever. Again, a lot of girls were attracted to the band. Not known for their guitar player, not known for the singer per se, but as a group, as a band, a lot of fans gravitated toward the singer, the bass player, the guitar player. Motley Crue wrote some amazing hits, and they were a great band live. So the original Motley Crue of 88, they exploded. Girls, Girls, Girls was out there. Same with Aerosmith of 87. Dude Looks Like a Lady. Aerosmith exploded in the late 80s. Motley Crue exploded more in the late 80s. Twisted Sister, they were never the same. after their big hit, We're Not Gonna Take It. I forgot what the name of the band, the name of the album was, but We're Not Gonna Take It, and what was the other one? We're Gonna Rock. Obviously, their two biggest hits for Twisted Sister. But ever since 84, 85, their albums of 86, 87, 88 were not as big, but they still have a huge following. They just weren't as big as they were in the early 80s. The 84 album that came out was huge for them. And plus the video, We're Not Gonna Take It, and I Wanna Rock, Rock. You know, those are anthems. AC/DC, Tales of the Unexpected. These guys are there. Another headliner band. Through thick and thin, they're no gimmicks, just raw, in-your-face rock and roll. And the whole band was tight, and they were fun to watch. I never got to see them live, but I've seen them on. I've seen live videos of them, and they're fun. They're a lot of fun. Great band. All right, Raiders from the East, Loudness, 1988. They have several live concerts on YouTube in full from the early 80s. I think the first one, I don't want to say Thunder in the East, but there's a concert footage video. It's either 82 or 83. I want to say it's 82. It came out in 82. But there's like about 3 or 4 concerts, full live concerts, pro shot of Loudness from the 80s that you can find on YouTube. And check out Loudness. Akira Takasaki, Japan's Eddie Van Halen. Obviously, there's only one Eddie, and you can tell Akira was heavily influenced by Eddie Van Halen. But in Japan, Akira Takasaki, if Eddie Van Halen wasn't touring Japan, Akira Takasaki was the Eddie Van Halen of Japan. He just was. And look, Oriental rockers take aim at stardom with hurricane eyes. They wrote some amazing riffs because of Akira Takasaki. And this vocalist here, Minoru Nihara, great range, and the band Loudness is awesome. So, they hit it big here in the U.S. Look, Tony McAlpine. Tony McAlpine made his name because of George Lynch, in my opinion, with Maximum Overdrive, when he collaborated with Jeff Watson of Night Ranger, and then he collaborated with George Lynch on 2 tracks. So he gave George Lynch 2 tracks to collaborate with on Maximum Overdrive, and that was a big challenge for George Lynch, and he talks about that at length in another magazine. But Tony McAlpine, I love Tony McAlpine. He was an offshoot of neoclassical, came right out of Yngwie, the school of Yngwie, but he did his own thing. Same with Vinnie Moore. So you had Yngwie Malmsteen leading the charge of neoclassical, but then you started hearing other guitar players, Vinnie Moore and Tony McAlpine from Shrapnel, each doing their own thing in the neoclassical vein, but it didn't sound like Yngwie. You can hear some Yngwie, but Tony McAlpine sounds nothing like Vinnie Moore, and Vinnie Moore sounds nothing like Tony McAlpine. But you can hear some Yngwie influence in both of their playing. But getting back to Tony McAlpine, he's a shredder. He's an awesome shredder, and he's fun to watch. And he's like a prodigy, a musical genius, because he can play the keyboard as good as the guitar or better. And a great composer, singer, songwriter, and so Tony McAlpine, well in demand. All right, here we go. We got Faster Pussycat, Pick Hit. Faster Pussycat, another great band, great songs, great band to watch live. Check out Faster Pussycat on YouTube. You can find some performances there. They were great for the 80s. All right, here we got Jack Russell of Great White. I was never that much of a fan of Great White. Obviously, they had some big hits. They just weren't that metal for me, but they were a good metal band. So how's that? They were a good little metal band. Even again, they had some good hits, like a few good hits. But I prefer Dokken, Rat, Judas Priest, Motley Crue before Great White. I can listen to a few Great White tracks, but Great White on the attack with Hard Times behind them. LA metal mavens go for broke. They hit it big. They had some good tunes, good video productions there. So Great White was right there in the thick of things. Dio, the Metal Terminators, Dream Evil propels metal merchants to new heights of glory. You had Craig Goldie, who replaced Vivian Campbell, holding his own with Dio. So I guess not many people get along with Dio, from what I've read or heard. But Dio was awesome with Vivian Campbell, but they did not miss a beat when they brought in Craig Goldie. Craig Goldie had his own distinct sound and playing, and he held his own. He complemented Dio perfectly in the band. So he was fun to watch. And the best hair I've ever seen was from Craig Goldie. He has the best hair. Oh, I love it. All right, I love Malice. To me, Malice is like a little junior Judas Priest. I put them up there with Judas Priest. Obviously, Judas Priest is legendary. They're huge. Rob Halford, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing. Judas Priest is awesome, and they're huge. But if you listen to Malice, a couple of tracks, it reminds me of Judas Priest. I love Malice. I wish Malice would have been bigger. But Malice is great. The singer, Florida Rockers unleashed latest dose of metal mayhem. Malice is awesome. There's some video footage of Malice from the 80s. Check them out. I love Malice. And their albums are good, and they're heavy. They're along the lines of Judas Priest type of metal. So if you like Judas Priest, you'll love Malice. You can say, oh, they're not as good as Judas Priest. I didn't say they were as good. I liked them. I thought they were as good. They just weren't as successful. But I love Malice. Oh, here we go, Tesla. When that first album that came out, or that first song, the single that came out, total Dokken ripoff. Something cowboy. What was that song called? I forget what it was called. But their first video hit that came out, total George Lynch and Dokken ripoff. It could have had like some Into the Fire type of classical or acoustic guitar playing in there. Into the Fire and some Into the Fire style riffs, chord progressions from that first hit. So obviously they were influenced by Into the Fire, in my opinion. Their first hit. I forget what the damn song was called. Blow You Away. Anyways, Tesla. Great band, but that first hit reminded me of Into the Fire and ripoff. All right, we got Judas Priest, the Metal Masters. Okay, obviously they're the kings, and you can, don't come for me because I put Malice next to Judas Priest. I still love Malice as good as Judas Priest. I love Malice, but Judas Priest has been there for what, 40, 50 years now? So they've been around. They paid their dues. They're legends. People forgot about Malice. They're like, Malice who? But if you hear Malice in the 80s and play it along with Judas Priest in the 80s, they go neck and neck. I love it. I love it. But look, the Metal Masters, there's Rob Halford. Look, they went from that leather look from 82 Screaming for Vengeance tour. Remember the Screaming for Vengeance tour? The videos on YouTube? It was all leather. And the hair was all different. It was all metal hair. Now here it's all teased, groomed. Look at this. It's just this is not tough. This is not tough. The 82 Screaming for Vengeance, that was tough. But this is a different look. Times change, but they have to, keep up. All right, look, 88. This guy made a name for himself. Neoclassical shred, Yngwie Malmsteen, Rising Force. This guy started it. You had Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, and then you had Yngwie Malmsteen. Guitar players that changed the game. Jimi Hendrix came out, they're like, what? It wasn't until Eddie Van Halen came out, they're like, what? And then there's all these other guitar players, and they're good. Yngwie comes out, you're like, what? And so he was one of those that basically changed how you play guitar. Eddie changed how you play guitar. Jimi Hendrix changed how you play guitar. And those three guitar players, Jimi Hendrix, came Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Ace Frehley, that type of school. Eddie Van Halen came Steve Lynch, George Lynch, Warren DeMartini, Jakey Lee, Matthias Jabs, under the school of Van Halen, with the flash and the tremolos and dive arms and two-handed tapping. And then under the school of Yngwie Malmsteen, you had and then you had the Vivian Campbell under Eddie Van Halen. Under Yngwie, you had obviously Tony McAlpine, Vinnie Moore. You had all these other neoclassical, Paul Gilbert, all these neoclassical shredders, Greg Howe, all under the tree of Yngwie Malmsteen. And on and on. It takes one guitar player to like, what was that? You know, so, and okay, so here we go, Lita Ford. That was my take on Yngwie. He was doing his own thing in '88. Fun to watch live. A lot of live footage of him live on YouTube. Check it out. Lita Ford, she had her own sound, her own style. So she stood out for herself. 80s metal chick, along with Vixen. Remember Vixen? Alright, Adrian Smith, Iron Maiden. Great guitar player, lead guitar player, writer. So Roots. So if you like Iron Maiden of '88, check it out. Kiss, Secrets of Success. And we have Rock Veterans Rally with Crazy Nights. That was a good album. Great anthem right there. Look at this, BC Rich. He started playing BC Rich for a while. Remember he had Ibanez? And then he played BC Rich. And then we got Bruce Kulick and Gene Simmons right here. So Kiss. Been around since what, 72? And they're still going strong. Actually, well, they broke up already. Again, look at this guitar. What is this? BC Rich. So he has, he must have an awesome guitar collection of Ibanez with the cracked Iceman and a lot of these amazing BC Rich guitars. I like BC Rich, but just too expensive to my taste. So I think Firefly should start copying BC Rich shapes and start making some Firefly BC Rich copies. That's what I say. Alright, here we go, Gene Simmons right there. So this is the spring of '88. We got Ozzy Osbourne, Straight Talk. Look at his hair. It's all poofy there. And look. Obviously they put makeup right here. The metal Madman rocks on despite firing of J.K. Lee. So here he's going to talk about firing of J.K. Lee. So you had Randy Rhoads, Bernie Torme, Brad Gillis, and then you had J.K. Lee. So in the spring of '88, he had already fired J.K. Lee. J.K. Lee may say he quit. Ozzy says, I fired you. So this article, I'm sure, talks about the firing of J.K. Lee. And what's next was Zakk Wylde, Waiting in the Wings. Waiting in the Wings was Zakk Wylde. But look at Randy Rhoads. Dies in '82, and they're still showing him in 1988. That's a nice little tip of the hat to Randy Rhoads. Oh, and if you go back, obviously, because he's playing his signature polka dot V stand the wall flying V right here. With the signature bow ties right there, there's Randy Rhoads. Poison, Partying the Platinum. See? They came out late, but they were already starting to headline. Poison. Very glam metal. Look at this makeup. Not heavy metal, but glam metal. Hair metal. So they were a lot of fun. So if you're into hair metal, Cinderella, Britney Fox, include Poison in the mix. And that's hair metal. Alright, you can see a full spread-on poster of John Bon Jovi right here. John Bon Jovi. So you can take out the staples right there and then pin this up in your locker room or your bedroom, whatever, if you're a fan of John Bon Jovi. Def Leppard, again, they hit it big in '82, '83 with Pyromania. Photograph, right? Photograph, Shot in the Fame. Metal Health, shot Quiet Riot to Fame. Shot at the Devil, or She's Got the Looks That Kill, shot Motley Crue to Fame, all in 1983. Def Leppard, look at this. This band was awesome. Or it still is. Def Leppard's awesome. Look at Phil Collins, look at this beautiful Ibanez. I love this guitar. I wouldn't mind having this guitar right here. 3 pickups right there. Oh, I love it. Tragedy on the drum player, obviously. But, great guitar player, singer-songwriter. Oh, we love it. Alright, we got Wasp, Raw and Rude. Look at this guitar with the blood splatter. We love it. Blackie Lawless, Wasp is good. There's some footage out there of Wasp from 1985 or 86. That's awesome. So check it out on YouTube. Wasp Live. Oh, great singer and great riffs. One of my favorite singers of all time, metal-wise, is Joey Tempest. I put him right up there with Jeff Tate. But Europe, First Strike Attack. John Norum helped launch Europe with the Final Countdown, that awesome, beautiful solo, which obviously is a tribute to Yngwie Malmsteen. It just is, because he's playing with the rhythm pickup, and he's doing this little fast picking, classical type playing a la Yngwie. But John Norum got out of the shadows of Yngwie. But Europe, that album is a great album, and John Norum was amazing. Then later replaced with another guitar player. I forgot his name. But Europe is awesome. Joey Tempest is a great singer. Okay, Celebrity Rater Records. So this is Anthrax rating records. So here we are. Anthrax is rating Dawkins' Dream Warriors, Georgia Satellites, Breaking Chains, Boston's Can't You Say, Anthrax's Oingo Boingo. So they're rating the record. Caught in the Act, Stryper. 1985-84. Stryper was making their mark. Stryper was good. They were hard and heavy with Oz Fox and Michael Sweet. Great guitar playing, great riffs. Oh, I love it. Caught in the Act, Stryper. Sammy Hagar, Return of the Red Rocker. So this is Sammy Hagar. Van Halen's vocalist steps out on his own. Remember 1, 2, 3 Lockbox. That was 1983-84. 3 Lockbox. It could have been 82. But around 83 was 1, 2, 3 Lockbox. 3 Lockbox. Remember, David Lee Roth was already gone. So here's Sammy Hagar with Van Halen. Okay. Steve Grimmett. This guy looks like 4'8", 200 pounds. But he has one video called See You in Hell. And I love it because it's really corny. And out of all the metal bands in the 80s, you got hair metal, glam metal, hair metal, regular metal. This is like death metal. I don't know what it is. But Grim Reaper. I'll see you in hell. Go look at the video See You in Hell by Grim Reaper. It'll crack you up because he keeps saying it. And here he is, a little short guy, a little short fat guy. See you in hell. It's funny. I hate it, but I always have to watch the video because it's so corny. But then there I am, singing it. The song grew on me, and then I start laughing. I'm closing in on 60. I'll be in my car, and here I am singing, I'll see you in hell. So check out Grim Reaper, To Hell and Back. British Bashers rally from adversity to release Rock You to Hell. And there's a Rock You to Hell. There's a song here somewhere where it says See You to Hell. I know it is. But look up Grim Reaper, See You in Hell, or something like that. Alright, Led Zeppelin, the rumors continue. Are they going to reunite or not? But Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant, was making his name for himself. So was Jimmy Page. They branched out, did some solo projects, and they had a good following. So if you're a fan of Led Zeppelin, you followed Jimmy Page's career, and you followed Robert Plant's career, and the drummer's son also had his own band. So you followed their career. Overkill, another great metal band. Thrash for cash. So this is thrash metal. Remember, you had hair metal, you had heavy metal, hair metal, glam metal, and you had thrash metal. Overkill, Megadeth, Metallica. See, Metallica versus Megadeth. Feud of the Yore. Feud of the Yore. Will Idle Talk lead to open hostility in months ahead? So Metallica versus Megadeth. So here we go. Remember, these guys used to play together, and then they branched out. These guys hit it big. These guys hit it big. James Hetfield and Dave Mustaine. So they both competed, but fans of both were still fans of each other. So if you were fans of Metallica, you were fans of Megadeth. Unless you took it personal, then you hated Megadeth, or vice versa. But here we go, Megadeth. Shy. British rockers aim for the big time with excess all areas. Shy. I never heard of the band Shy. Again, Too Little Too Late. I never heard of them. There was Dave Mustaine article. Halloween. Again, thrash metal. You had Overkill, thrash metal. I'm sorry, you had Overkill. You had Grim Reaper. I love it. See You in Hell. Fire Down Below. Teutonic Terrors Unleashed. Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 below. Fire down. So I love it. See you in hell. Halloween. I love the little Halloween, the carved jack-o'-lantern. I love it. That was a great logo. Great graphic. Halloween. Not Halloween, but Halloween. I love it. All right. Here it is. Hit Parader's 1988 Heavy Metal Calendar. So if you wanted your own calendar for 88, you would go ahead and submit a check for however much they wanted. Submit it, mail it a check, and then wait 4 or 6 weeks for delivery. Want some back copies of these issues? Here's how you can order it. Back then, there must have been like what, $6, $7? I can't read that far. Oh, here we go. $2.50 per copy. That's not. See, that was cheap. So $2.50 for a magazine, but that was a lot back then. In 1988, $2.50 was a lot. $7 for 83, and $13 for 86. So if you wanted to, that was your way to get some back issues. All right, song index. If you want to learn some lyrics, here we go. Metal Runs Professional Guitar Instruction. So you send away for a guitar instruction. Again, more lyrics. Wanted Dead or Alive. Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. T-shirts. You want to order some rock concert T-shirts. Again, send your check, your size, and pick your favorite band, and you would get it. Same thing with posters. Musicade. Musicade right here. Call of the Wild, more lyrics. Great 88 right there. More song lyrics. Girls, girls, girls. Again, more lyrics over here. You want necklaces, chains, and so forth, the metal stuff. You order it right there. Wasted spandex. So if you want to order some metal clothing, you do it right here. More lyrics. Look, subscribe now to Hit Parader. Tells you right here, cut it out. Subscribe, you'll get monthly issues. Every month you'll get a new issue mailed to your house. I would just run to the local 7-Eleven store. And that's where every month I would go to 7-Eleven when I was a kid, especially in the 70s. I remember that. And I would look at Cream, Hit Parader, and Circus. And depending who was on the cover, if it was Kiss, I'd buy it. If it had anything with Kiss, I'd have to buy it. Because remember, there was no internet. So that was my favorite band. In the 70s, for hard rock, it was Kiss. And if it was Led Zeppelin or Yes or other bands, I would read them at the store. But if it was Kiss, I'd have to buy it. It would have a poster in it. We're talking about an upcoming tour or album and so forth. But I always had to buy Kiss. Obviously, I lost them or got rid of them as I get older. All right, more lyrics. Here's another ad stacked. I want to say this is Doug Marks. I don't know who this is. I can't read that small print. If you know who this is, let me know. I'm just curious to see who this is. But obviously, he's playing a bass. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a bass. And this is a carbon stack. So this is the bass amps right here. And this is clearly a bass based on 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see 6. I see 4. So, correct me if I'm wrong. More lyrics here. Rock Tops t-shirts and jerseys of your favorite bands and artists right there. Again, more advertisements here. Reward yourself. More song lyrics. Heavy Metal Hot Shots. So that was a magazine trying to compete with the other one. So Heavy Metal Hot Shots was offshoot of Hit Parader right here. Metal's Heaviest Trios. So again, more magazines right here. Look for the outrageous Hit Parader's 20th anniversary of heavy metal on sale at your newsstand in March of '88. So check that out. Again, look, End of the Rainbow. End of the Rainbow. All right. Okay, we'll get to this. Look, Musicians Book Service. 30 super reasons to stock up. So if you wanted to look up some guitar magazines, music magazines, this is where you stock up. Look at this. Bold new product from Gibson USA. The Les Paul Custom Light. So this is a light. Ultra lightweight while retaining the exotic woods and construction for the best sustain and tone in the world. Sleek contoured body and impressive fret access. So I love this. I always liked that logo right here. I wish they would continue making Les Pauls with this logo and with the inlay on the first fret. I just love that. I love Les Pauls that have the inlay on the first fret with this logo. Those would be the Les Pauls I would look for and buy, personally, even today. If I wanted to spend that much money, it would be a Les Paul with the full inlays and this logo. I prefer this logo than the written Les Paul. Super output, 1959 Les Paul pickups plus coil tap switch adds wild new sounds to the traditional. Every Les Paul guitar player in the world will want to add new Les Paul custom light. Now look, this has 3 knobs and a switch. This is some type of little switch. So it's interesting. Look how skinny this is. So I wonder if they still make them, or if you can find these online somewhere. But look at that, the Les Paul custom light. I don't think they make these anymore. Obviously, this is 1988. But look how thin this guitar is. Usually they're a lot thicker, right? Les Pauls are thick. This wouldn't be a bad guitar to have or to find. The Les Paul custom light. I'm sure they're on eBay somewhere. Someone's got this on eBay or Reverb. So look it up and see if you have one. If you have one, let me know. I like it. Alright, and look. The back of the spring edition of 1988 Imperator has Dokken Back for the Attack. This album came out in 87 and they're still promoting it. So the band right here, Elektra, is promoting Dokken on the back of this Imperator issue. Back for the Attack. You got George, Don, Mick, Wild Mick Brown, and you have Jeff Pilson. Sadly, this is their last studio album they ever made as a band in the 80s. I'm not including the the reunion tour of 94, 95 with Dysfunctional or Erase the Slate, or not Erase the Slate. What was that? It was Dysfunctional and then something else, Shadow of Life. I'm not including those albums because that was mid-90s. But this was their last studio album. And then this was followed by Beast from the East in 1988, which 1988, which I think came out around Christmas time. Around 88, I forget. So, Back for the Attack, some will say this is probably their best album. This was all George Lynch. Under Lock and Key was a great band album showcasing George Lynch. Back for the Attack was all George Lynch saying, all right, I'm going to be a guitar hero. I am the guitar hero. This is what I can do. Because every song he just was blistering on Back for the Attack. Under Lock and Key was a great album for the band, showcasing George Lynch. A lot of great songs and solos on Under Lock and Key. But this one showcased George Lynch as a guitar hero. Even though, to me, he was already a guitar hero in 82, 83. But Back for the Attack was amazing. Alright, so that was Imperator's Magazine Yearbook Spring 1988 edition. Let me know what you think. What were your favorite bands of 1988? What bands or concerts did you go see in 1988? What was your reaction of the metal scene in 1988? All I remember, I can look back at it and say, oh, that was the beginning of the end. I didn't know it was the beginning of the end in 1988. I thought, as with most people did, that these bands would be around well into the 90s. It was 80s metal. But they call it 80s metal for a reason, because there was no 80s metal in the 90s. And 90s metal was not the same as 80s metal. In the 90s, it was primarily grunge. And all your favorite bands from the 80s, they disappeared in the 90s. Remember, you had Warrant, Britney Fox, Cinderella. They were still like hanging on, but then those arenas dried up and they started playing clubs, nightclubs, like the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Rainbow. They were playing clubs, 1,000, 2,000 seat clubs, or 300, 600 seat clubs, as opposed to 20,000 seat arenas. The arena days were over. They were playing clubs, and they were changing their look, getting rid of all the elaborate costumes and hair and makeup, dressing down. And then they started doing this unplugged crap, because Nirvana does unplugged and Kiss does unplugged. And then all these other bands start doing unplugged. Look at us. We can play our songs on acoustic guitars. We don't need effects. We don't need pedals. Look at us. And then other bands started doing that to stay relevant, or, look at us, or we're going to reinvent ourselves. But looking back, 1988 was a great year for metal. I loved it, and I thought it was going to continue. But then you started seeing bands break up, and then MTV was not the same anymore. They were having more game shows and so forth. So that's what happened with the 80s metal scene. All right, let me know what you think about this issue. Again, let me know your comments and thoughts on 80s metal of 1988. All right, I'm Tony. Thanks for watching this video here at KGTR. Any questions, comments, or feedback, leave them below. And I'll see you all in the next video.